can afford to keep their child in a licensed facility or continuing to work at all. Quote, "We cannot solve this problem alone," Christensen said. "We need the support of lawmakers, the insurance industry, the regulatory agencies to address the root cause of the rates and increases disproportionately affecting those who need it most." As the clock continues to tick here, that's actually the end of the story. I wanted to read that story because that was August, and it showed at that point in time we had people on this side of the aisle who wanted to negotiate. They were in the news. I summated it by saying there were 5 people, but I'm sure there's more by now. So that is why we're asking with this simple proposal, let's open the government, extend these tax credits for a year, because we know there's bipartisan support in both the House and Senate to do that, and continue to reform this so we can keep this child care facility in Vancouver, Washington in business. Let's not make this, we've shared a lot of stories about individual people, but we haven't shared enough stories about the small business impact and the economic impact to employers when you take affordable health insurance away from them and they don't have options. This owner lamented in the story, which should I do? Do I absorb these costs and not be a profitable business? Do I make these employees not have health insurance? Do I raise these costs and then these parents can't have the child care that they need to stay? She told me on that day that literally some people decided to stop work because they no longer could afford child care. So this is ruining our whole economic picture by making insurance too expensive, by making the cost play too big a role in our economy and taking workers away from us. So I support this 1-year proposal. I support us working together to reform the system. I've championed many things in the Affordable Care Act that have driven down costs, and I will work with any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to continue and expand that work, because it is important. It is important for us to continue to have affordability, particularly in health care, as we have a rising baby boomer population reaching retirement age. We have no other choice but then to focus on affordability. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.
The Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, thank you. Millions of Americans are counting on Democrats to stop Donald Trump and the Republicans from raising health care costs. And I'm here to say Democrats will not back down. Fighting to lower health care costs is a righteous fight. For too many Americans, health care premiums are going up by hundreds or even thousands of dollars a month. Who has that kind of money? Just this week, I talked to a woman in Florida, practically in Donald Trump's backyard. She is a wife, she is a mother of 4 lively kids, and she is about to lose her health insurance because of Trump's cuts. So what does that mean for her? She has malignant melanoma, and now she is looking at canceling her ongoing treatments because once she loses her insurance, she cannot afford treatment for her cancer. That is deeply, deeply wrong. Democrats are in this fight for the right reason, and Democrats will stay in this fight for the right reasons. In July, congressional Republicans worked hand in hand with President Trump on their biggest passion project, jamming through a bill to hand out massive tax cuts to millionaires, billionaires, and giant corporations. And then, just to put a little extra whipped cream on top of their Republican ice cream sundae, they paid for those billionaire tax cuts by slashing health care coverage for millions of Americans. Every single Republican voted for it, and every single Democrat voted against it. And when the Republicans voted to cut health care funding last July, Democrats said, we cannot sign off on a 2026 budget that cuts health care for millions of Americans. On September 30th, the 2025 budget expired, and Democrats were ready to negotiate to get some of those health care cuts reversed in the 2026 budget. But the Republicans didn't want to negotiate. Nope. The Republicans decided they would rather shut down government than offer a single nickel to help Americans manage health care costs. They told Democrats to vote for the Republican spending bill, take it or leave it. And they have repeated their take it or leave it through 15 votes and 38 days. Now, Democrats have asked over and over and over and over to negotiate to help Americans with their health care costs. But Donald Trump and the Republicans flatly refused to even talk to Democrats to try to get the government back open. Not even once have the Republicans been willing to negotiate. Not once. So, where are we now? Well, Trump tweeted 7 times in one day about his brand new marble bathroom at the White House, while Americans turned to crowdfunding to pay for their health care and grocery bills. Trump hosted a Great Gatsby-themed party while he turned off food assistance for millions of Americans. You know the message to 42 million Americans from Donald Trump? Eat dirt. And Trump is weighing the important idea of etching corporations' names into his grand new gold-encrusted ballroom, while millions of Americans who lose their health insurance will get sick and be forced to decide whether to give up care altogether or go bankrupt trying to pay for it. Meanwhile, Republicans in Congress are in disarray. The House is now in its 7th week of paid vacation. They couldn't reopen the government if they wanted to because they aren't even in Washington to vote. They have members, Republican and Democratic members, who want a deal on health care. But Speaker Johnson just says, nope, everyone spend another week on paid vacation. And here on the Senate side, Republicans are in chaos. Leader Thune puts the same bill up over and over for the same votes, but he won't talk about changing a single word. And now he can't even organize a vote among Republicans to reorganize the government. Instead, Republicans are fighting with Republicans over what to do, and still no one says, let's help families on health care and get the government open. So, Democrats have put a proposal on the table. Lower costs by extending health tax credits for 1 year and reopen government. Do it all in one vote. And during this next year, we will continue to work to make our health care system work better. It's a common sense plan that helps people across this country and that gets our government open. The Senate could do its part to reopen government in less than an hour. We can do it right now, this afternoon. We just have to put the interests of the American people ahead of politics. Americans are demanding, urging, begging Congress to do something. Do something before Americans are forced to get sicker and sicker before they can get health care. Do something before health care costs go up and up and up for everyone in this country. People are sick of Washington politics. So we ask our Republican colleagues, help us do what is right for the American people and help us do it right now. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I stand here today on behalf of the people of Massachusetts to say that we are angry. We are angry that Trump and MAGA Republicans are doubling the cost for millions of Americans, and their health care bills are going to skyrocket when they promised lower prices. We are angry that Trump and MAGA Republicans are stripping Medicaid from the most vulnerable people in our communities. We are angry that Trump and the MAGA Republicans are making families with hungry children go to food pantries for their next meal, forcing families to choose between groceries and rent. We are angry that Trump and MAGA Republicans are using public servants as pawns in their hateful political games. And we are angry that during all of this, the Republicans have refused to come to the negotiating table. The House of Representatives has been out for 6 weeks. They're in a political witness protection program across our nation, refusing to come to Washington to sit down to negotiate on these issues. And Americans are counting the hours that are left to solve this health care crisis for them and their families. They're looking around for help. They're looking around for hope. And they are all looking instead at cruelty, pain, fear. That is the agenda of Trump's MAGA Republican Party. Last weekend, I met with Jeff from Natick, who is fighting stage 4 lung cancer. He pays $35,000 a year for an affordable health care plan. $35,000 a year. If he can't keep that insurance plan on December 31st, he will have to pay $300,000 a year. Jeff does not have $300,000. That's about to hit him in about 7 weeks. Barbara, she retired early to take care of her spouse with dementia. Her bill's going from $7,500 a year to $18,000 a year. She cannot afford that. There are 22 million stories like Jeff, like Barbara, 22 million of them, who are facing Thanksgiving and Christmas over the next 7 weeks, and there are no answers for them. 22 million people. That's outrageous. These people are afraid and they're angry. By the way, we saw a lot of that anger come out on Tuesday night. They came out angry. They came out of fear to vote. That's what happened. And it's only going to build and build and build as each day goes by, and we cannot get an answer from the Republicans on how are we going to handle those people? How are we going to give them what they need for those families? And it is very difficult to fathom this abject cruelty of this president, who is happy to force grandma to choose between paying for her prescription and paying for her heating bill, forcing a caretaker to choose between being there for their parent with Alzheimer's or picking up an extra shift, forcing a single mom to choose between paying for a checkup or paying for after-school snacks. And since they have taken over in January, the Republicans have promised that they were going to solve the health care crisis in our country. And all it's done is grow and grow and grow. And they pass a bill to take away all of the health care coverage for all of these 22 million people, and then transferred the money to billionaires in tax breaks. They swiped the health care of 22 million vulnerable people for billionaires. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great Massachusetts poet, said, "Health is the first wealth." And MAGA Republicans and Trump have looted that wealth, that health, for those people. These people are angry and they're afraid. They're afraid. They don't have the backup funding that millionaires and billionaires have. Now, my father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company. He drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company I'm his son. And I believe that God created a world where every single person is able to receive the health care which they are entitled to. 3 meals a day, put children through school, keep them safe from illness, give Americans dignity in tough times. Those are the families we're talking to right now. It's the milkmen, it's the workers in nursing homes, it's the children across our country who are going to see a loved one lose their health care in 7 weeks. And the Republicans refuse to come to the table. Every American has a right to live in dignity in tough times. That's where we are right now. They're facing increases in electricity costs, in healthcare costs, in food costs, in clothing costs, in everything. And we can solve at least the healthcare part of this issue right here. The richest nation in the world can ensure peace and health and opportunity for every man and woman and child in our country. We're the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. And the Republicans are about to let 22 million of them lose their health insurance or see it increase by double or triple, or in the case of Eric from Natick, 10 times from $30,000 a year to $300,000 a year, and he is in stage 4 lung cancer? And we're not even discussing this? The House of Representatives is at a vacation for 6 weeks? Well, those 6 weeks, if you project them forward from now, we're talking about Christmas. That's what we're talking about. What are we in the world is in the mind of Donald Trump that he would allow these families for the next 6 weeks to worry about where the coverage for their family is going to come from? The very least we can do is extend the Affordable Care Tax credits for 1 more year and provide some desperately needed relief for those who are struggling to get by, who need our help right now, who need the peace of mind right now. Those 220 Republicans on that political witness protection program that they're on across the country, they're going to have health insurance for their families. They don't have to worry this Thanksgiving or Christmas about the conversation that's going to take place. And all we're asking for is a vote to provide that health care for the next year for those families and reopen the government so the federal workers can get paid and go back on the job. Pretty simple. And we're looking for any Republican anywhere to come and discuss it with us, negotiate it with us. And they just keep saying no. So this anger that people are feeling, these people are pissed off at the federal government, pissed off that they're losing coverage for their family members. And they want the Republicans to come to the table and solve this problem. What we saw on Tuesday night was the beginning of this anger being translated into action. They asked the ancient Greek philosopher once, when would we know true justice? And he answered, we will know true justice when those who have not been harmed are as angry as those who have been harmed. And across our country right now, those who have not been harmed are angry on behalf of those who are about to be harmed. 22 million people losing their health insurance, seeing skyrocketing health insurance rates. Families, 42 million of them without food stamps, without SNAP programs for nutrition for their families. People are angry, and they deserve an answer. And all we're asking for is 1 year so that we can negotiate this issue. 1 year so we can give peace of mind to 22 million families that they know they will have health insurance after this Thanksgiving and Christmas. I thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
Senator from Oregon.
President, I support this proposal and would like Americans to know why. Since before Donald Trump was sworn in for a second term, Senate Democrats have known that this is a health care problem for millions of American families that cries out for fixing. Again and again, we asked our Republican colleagues to work with us, sit with us, and negotiate improvements in a black-letter law that makes Americans' health care better for American families. Again and again, we were turned down. So, on the Senate Finance Committee, everybody knew this day was coming long before Donald Trump took the oath of office. Now the crisis is here, and I'm here to say our door is still open. The Senate Finance Committee has a track record of getting bipartisan work done. Senator Crapo and I wrote a bill that transformed how pharmacy benefit managers work in Medicare. It passed the Finance Committee 26-0. Despite this track record, Republicans still refuse to sit down and even have a conversation about how to help these Americans afford their premiums. That's why we've all been out on the floor today. I'm in the fight for Bart and Carla from Eugene, Oregon. A few years away from Medicare, they've had long careers as a carpenter and a teacher. They worked hard. Now the rug is being pulled out from under them. They've been paying $400 a month in premiums. Without an extension of the credits, they're going to pay $2,200 a month. That's an increase they just can't handle. My Republican colleagues have provided a host of excuses about why they can't work with us, but the excuses don't hold water. For example, there have been allegations of fraud, the same straw man that they used to make the largest Medicaid cuts in history. Republicans pretend they're fighting fraud, but really they're just pushing up costs and kicking working people off their health insurance. And so, to again try to bring everybody together, we introduced legislation that would prevent bad actor brokers from enrolling or switching people into plans without their knowledge. That way we could slap fraudsters with criminal penalties when they harm consumers. On the Republican side, after all the talk, no co-sponsors. Finally, there's been an excuse that says this policy was created during COVID, and now that the pandemic has passed, the tax credits ought to lapse too. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see Republicans coming down to the floor, for example, to say that telehealth benefits for seniors on Medicare should expire because they were created during the pandemic. This is something I feel strongly about, as my friend from Minnesota knows. I wrote that with the late Orrin Hatch on a bipartisan basis again. The first Trump administration used them to great success. Just because a good health care policy was created in a crisis moment doesn't mean it ought to be ripped away from Americans once the crisis is passed, especially when ending that policy would create a new crisis for over 20 million people who no longer will be able to afford good quality health care. Those are just a couple of the Republican excuses. But the bottom line is, over here, we want to protect families' health care and keep premiums from rocketing into the stratosphere. And unfortunately, the Republicans haven't shared that view. My hope is, and we've had an important conversation, appreciate the leadership, Senator Klobuchar, we've had an important conversation about trying to get our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to do the right thing. Join us as we've done so often in the Senate Finance Committee, and lower Americans' health care costs. I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Senator from Georgia.
I believe in health care. Your health, my mother told me a long time ago, is everything, so take care of your health. It is vital. It is essential. And I believe that health care is a human right. And it is certainly something that the wealthiest nation on the planet and in the history of humankind can and ought to provide for all of its citizens. It is right, it is fair, but it is also smart. A healthy nation is a strong nation. Healthy children are ready to learn. And so that's why I've worked so hard and so long with my colleagues on this issue. Matter of fact, long before I came to the Senate, I've been focused on this issue of health care, trying to get my home state of Georgia to expand. And I keep preaching that sermon because right now there are more than 500,000 Georgians who are in the health care coverage gap. I came here in 2017 to this place not as a senator, but as a pastor and as an activist. And I remember getting arrested, I believe, in 2017, when there were major health care cuts on the table. And as I began to make my argument and gathered with other pastors in the rotunda, the Capitol Police, very professionally, but they began to say to us, pastors, you can't gather and pray in the rotunda, we'll have to arrest you. But what they didn't understand is that I had already been arrested. My mind and my imagination had been arrested by this idea that surely the American nation can do better than this. Healthcare is a human right. Dr. King, who led the church that I am still honored to lead, said that of all the injustices, inequality in healthcare is the most shocking and the most inhumane. And that's why I was proud to join my colleagues, and I am proud to stand with my colleagues in this fight. This is about 22 million Americans who will see their health care premiums double. Some triple, some quadruple. And this is not theoretical stuff for me. These are the people in my community. These are folks sitting in the pews of my church. And many of them will lose their health care if something doesn't happen. A few weeks ago, I was at the Evans County Memorial Hospital in Evans County. And I got to tell you, that's a red district. I don't have a whole lot of votes. I got some. But Claxton, Georgia, known for the fruitcakes. And I was at that hospital, and I can tell you that those folks were already worried because of the draconian cuts to Medicaid in the big, beautiful bill, so-called beautiful bill. 15 million Americans already standing to lose their health care, and then the premiums raised for 22 million Americans while giving Elon Musk and people like him a tax cut? That's beyond the pale of partisanship. For me, that's not about Democrats and Republicans. You ask ordinary people on the street if they think that's fair. I can tell you that those folks in Evans County, many of whom did not vote for me, but I am fighting for them because I am their senator too. They're worried about it. And so that's why we've been in this fight, and that's why we continue to stand to this very day. It's day 38. And we're holding vigil because of the pain of the people we represent. And there's a lot of pain to go around. 22 million whose premiums may go up, have gone up. They're seeing it on the portals right now. Federal workers who've been furloughed. The kids who like me, are in Head Start. We've got Head Start centers that are about to shutter because of the government shutdown. And let's be honest, the folks on SNAP were dragged into this fight. They were not a part of this. They were dragged into this fight. There are already legal provisions to make sure that they are cared for, and this administration right now is defying a court order to feed America's hungry people. But with all of that pain, from the crisis in health care, from the ongoing government shutdown, we come to our sisters and our brothers on the other side and we extend the hand of compromise. Because it hasn't taken me long to learn that really that's the only way you get anything done in this body. I work all the time with colleagues with whom I disagree about 90% of the time. Because it's not about them and it's not about me, it's about the people we represent. And the founders were wise to organize our government in such a way that that's the only way to have sustainable change, is to do it on a bipartisan basis. And so my colleagues have taken their position, we've taken ours, and here we are at an impasse. But I represent a state that elected me and Donald Trump. And so they expect us to figure it out. Sometimes when I'm driving my car, I've got a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, 9-year-old daughter, 6-year-old son. Sometimes they're in the back seat having a disagreement. He looked at me. She touched me. And then they say, Daddy, you know, they call on me. And here's what I say more often than not: figure it out. The two of you on the back seat of the car, that's your sister, that's your brother. We're all in the same car. We're trying to get to the same destination. Figure it out. We're all in the same car tonight. Democrats and Republicans. There's a way in which the poor and the wealthy there's a way in which they're all in the same car. COVID reminded us of that. Before we had a vaccine, if my neighbor had the virus, I too was in peril. That didn't make my neighbor my adversary. That means that I have a vested interest in making sure that my neighbor has coverage. And so here's the proposal: 1 year clean extension of the ACA subsidies. That's not what we want. You know, if we had it our way, we would make it permanent. That's not what we fought for 38 days for, a 1 year extension, but we're offering that after standing for 38 days. 1 year extension, and then let's sit down, and in the words of Scripture, let us reason together. Let us have a conversation. Let's reopen the government. Let's extend health care to folks who in real time are opening up the portal and they have sticker shock. And then let's sit down and figure it out, because if we're honest, the status quo is not working very well for anybody. Anybody who's just trying to defend the status quo has not been talking to ordinary people. There are a lot of things that need to be fixed, and we can do that, but we've got to reopen the government and give people a little bit of hope. Give those 22 million Americans hope. Give the 44 million Americans who need SNAP some hope. Give our federal workers some hope. There's an African proverb that says, when the elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. It's the grassroots in Georgia and all across the nation right now who are suffering, because too often the politicians make the politics about the politicians rather than about the people. Let's center the people, and if we center the people, we will compromise, and we'll figure it out. In closing, Mr. President, nobody believes a Baptist preacher when he says in closing. I've worked with members of your party on a whole range of things. And at the risk of embarrassing him, Ted Cruz and I even work together every now and then. And I mention him because early in my tenure here, he and I worked on a little thing, just a little provision, to try to get a little bit closer to building out this interstate, I-14, that would run through Georgia all the way to Texas. Same road that runs through Texas runs through Georgia. And if we get that road built out, when it's time to get on that road, nobody asks you, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? Nobody asks you about your religion or if you have a religious tradition at all. Nobody asks you. Some folks are going to church, some are going to the mosque, some are going to temples, some are going to the park, some are going to the beach, but they all get on the same road trying to get to wherever they're going. There is a road that runs through this American experience. There's a road that runs through our humanity that ought to connect all of us together, that ought to remind us that we all want our children to thrive and we all want our families to have a future. Let us make haste to that road and walk towards a brighter American future. I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Senator from Minnesota.
I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Osterbrooks.
Senator from Wisconsin. Without objection.
Mr. President, I came to the floor 2 weeks ago with a completely nonpartisan, very sincere attempt with a bill that we called the Shutdown Fairness Act to simply pay the federal workers who we were requiring to work. The finest among us, the members of our military, people in federal law enforcement, TSA, the air traffic controllers who keep our skies safe. Now, when I was asking the Senate to proceed to that bill, the senator from Maryland offered an alternative. He called it the True Shutdown Fairness Act. The main difference is his was only going to be for 1 year. My bill's permanently stops using federal employees and the American public as pawns in these sick partisan games. The other difference was my bill is focusing on the people we were forcing to work. His bill added furloughed workers. So on the floor 2 weeks ago, I said, if you're serious about passing this bill, if you're serious about stopping, and he said we can't punish federal employees for our dysfunction. If you're serious about that, I told the senator from Maryland, vote to get on the bill. I will include that. I will convince our conference to include furloughed workers, get on the bill, we'll amend it, we'll get this passed, we'll start paying people. He rejected that offer. Now we started having discussions. His staff immediately acknowledged the fact that my bill did not in any way, shape, or form impact the president's authority in terms of who determined who was furloughed, who gets, included in reduction in force. It was silent. Even though they falsely accused my bill of giving the president greater authority, it didn't. I came to the floor again today to pass an amended bill with furloughed workers. By the way, a bill that is now supported by the American Federation of Government Employees. I believe that's the largest public employee union, the Federal Managers Association, Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, National Air Traffic Controllers Association. And we're going to have the senator from Texas come down and talk about what is happening with air travel as we speak. The International Association of Firefighters, the Association of Flight Attendants. These are public sector unions that generally don't support Republican legislation. What they particularly like about my bill is the fact that it's permanent. It prevents federal workers and, quite honestly, the broader American public from being used as pawns, again, in these sick political games being played right now with their lives. So, in a few minutes, we're going to proceed to vote on a motion to proceed to my original bill. That's how this works. The leader voted no, so we can bring it up for reconsideration. So we have to bring that bill up. But we already have the language for the substitute amendment, which includes furloughed workers, that has been vetted by, quite honestly, offices, both Democrat and Republican Senate offices, by the Office of Management and Budget, by the public sector unions who have come out in support for it. This is a bill that is ready for prime time. This is a bill that is ready to be passed tonight. Now, it was unfortunate that we couldn't pass it by unanimous consent, because had we done that, the House is on a 48-hour callback, and they will come back. The Speaker has already said they will pass this in the House, and we can get our military members, air traffic controllers, these federal workers who keep us safe, we can get them paid. So again, I'm just asking, I'm actually pleading with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to please vote to proceed to this bill. We will substitute an amendment that includes furloughed workers. We can pass this tonight. If we vote to proceed, we can then vote for unanimous consent to waive all the time agreements, and we could even pass this yet tonight. Make our skies safer. But I know the senator from Alaska has a few words to say, and I know the senator from Texas will as well. So I yield to the senator from Alaska.
Thank you, my colleague from Wisconsin, Senator Johnson, and I've been proud to work with him on this bill over the last couple of weeks. The way this came to the floor, Senator Johnson and I were making the case in the conference. I had a bill that actually was the bill about paying our troops. Imagine that. You wouldn't want to pay our military during a shutdown, including the Coast Guard. Senator Johnson came to me and said, hey, Dan, I got a broader bill. Let's pay everybody who's required to work to keep us safe in America. So I said, great idea. Let's do it. So this is the Shutdown Fairness Act. Senator Johnson already talked about what it does. It's very, very simple. If you are required to work because your job's important, primarily because you're keeping Americans safe, then you should be paid. We have a great example right here. All these Capitol police officers right now keeping us safe right here on the Capitol, they're not getting paid. Air traffic controllers, TSA, keeping us safe right now in America. Senator Cruz is going to talk about what they've been going through. They're not getting paid. They should be paid. And of course, our military. President Trump has worked magic to keep them getting paid, but that's going to run out soon. So this is a very simple bill. There's nothing more American than paying people for their hard work, especially when the federal government is requiring them to work. So what happened? Oh, and by the way, Senator Johnson mentioned it's well over 200 groups now. I have the long list of public employee unions, the Teamsters, private sector unions, all kinds of organizations across America are saying to our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, pass the short-term CR, but also pass this bill. So what happened? When we worked this 2 weeks ago, there was a number of Democrat senators who came to us and they're very interested in doing it. Because it makes sense. How could you not be interested in doing it? We can negotiate health care and these other issues, but the men and women in the federal government who are working without a paycheck, you've been hearing stories about the FAA guy driving an Uber because he's got to pay his family. He's not getting paid. And he's had a really important job as an air traffic controller. So we thought our bill was going to pass. A number of Democrat senators were like, hey, we agree with this. It's 2 weeks ago. So what happened? Here's what happened. The same thing that's been happening every night. The minority leader, Senator Schumer, and the Democratic leadership is pressuring the other Democrat senators, don't do it. Don't do it. The pressure comes on them. It's happening right now. The pressure comes on. Don't do it. We got to make sure the left wing of the party's happy. You heard Senator Schumer recently that we're, quote, winning. We are winning the shutdown. I'll tell you who's not winning the shutdown. By the way, I have no idea who he's talking about when he says we, but I'll tell you who's not winning the shutdown. The men and women in America who work for the federal government who aren't getting a paycheck and are required to work. So that's what happened last time. Democrat senators are going to vote for our bill. And the leadership on the Democratic side, because they want to use these people as leverage, convince them, pressure them not to vote for it. So I hope my Democrat colleagues, at least 9 of you, actually it's 8 of you, have the courage to look at your leader and go, you know what, Chuck, sorry, I'm going to pay the Marines. I'm going to pay the Navy. I'm going to pay the FAA. I'm going to pay TSA. And we're certainly not going to use them, as Senator Johnson said, as pawns. Because right now they're being used as pawns. So here's the deal. To my Democratic colleagues, 2 weeks ago, a number of you were going to do this. We had discussions. And then you kind of got pressured to not. Show some courage. Walk up and vote with us to pay the men and women in America, federal workers who are keeping us safe and haven't gotten a paycheck. There's nothing more American than that. Have the courage to do it. I yield back to my colleague from Wisconsin.
And I want to thank the senator for Alaska. He has been so dedicated. He's been so tenacious in making sure the finest amongst the men and women of our military get paid, and then signing on to my effort to broaden this to all federal employees. Again, as you said, they shouldn't have to go to food banks. They shouldn't have to drive DoorDash to pay their child's tuition or to feed their families. This is ridiculous. But we had a chilling report from the senator from Texas, the chairman of the Commerce Committee, in terms of what's happening with air traffic control and in terms of our skies. But before we turn to the senator from Texas, we're going to go to the senator from Wyoming has a few words to speak on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank Senator Johnson for his dedication to try to pry the federal workers who are being used in what is a political battle, and I want to excuse them from a partisan political battle that is not of their making, so they can go back to work and serve the American people. So what we have here is a political standoff between Democrats and Republicans in Congress. It has nothing to do with the air traffic controllers. Some of them are Democrats, some are Republicans. It has nothing to do with any other essential or furloughed federal worker. Some of them are Democrats and Republicans. Some of them probably agree that we should shut down the government so insurance companies can make billions more dollars off the American taxpayers under Obamacare. Some of them are Republicans and think that we should open the government and work out this health care mess after we open the government. But regardless of that, they're not in a position to make those decisions. We are. So here we are, in the longest shutdown in government history. The Congress is responsible for it. It's political, it's not policy driven. So since we're going to argue about politics and who's winning and who's losing and who's setting themselves up to have the next president or win the midterms, instead of worrying about whether the airways are safe, whether WIC is funded, whether SNAP is funded, whether workers are funded, whether the military is funded, since we're going to fight over who's going to win the election a year from now, let's excuse the people who are not responsible for this dysfunction from our dysfunction. That's what Senator Johnson is trying to do. Now, we all agree, Democrats and Republicans, that this is not fair to federal workers, people who are in the military, who are air traffic controllers, who are essential, who are furloughed. It's not fair to them. We all agree. What Senator Johnson is doing is finding a way that we can be together on a bipartisan basis, excuse the federal workers from this mess, let them be paid, and let us go on with our absurd partisan political dysfunction if that's what we want. If we want to fight about health care, it's my opinion we ought to do it after we fully open the government. But if we're not willing to do that, let's at least let the federal workers off the hook. I applaud Senator Johnson. I applaud Senator Sullivan. I applaud Senator Cruz. We want to be able to keep Americans safe who are getting in airplanes every day. We want to keep Americans safe who are working in the military. They don't make very much money, especially those young first and second year military employees. And some of those have young families. Some of those have spouses. So I'm telling you, they don't make much money. And then you withhold their pay. Those are the people that are working paycheck to paycheck. Let them out of our political dysfunction. Don't make them suffer for our political misfunction and dysfunction. I want to also thank any Democrat who will listen and be compassionate towards your federal workers in your districts. This is wrong for those of us, whether we disagree about health care or not, whether you want to fund billions of dollars to give to insurance companies for a broken health care system, fine. We can have that debate. But don't penalize the federal workers for our dysfunction, our disrespect for them. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
I appreciate the remarks by Senator from Wyoming. I know people are already coming down here to vote, but there are no time restrictions here. This is extremely important. We have a number of senators that want to speak to this issue. We should give them time to speak. Hopefully, to convince our colleagues on the other side to, again, be fair. Think about what your vote means to people that don't want to be used as pawns. Now, I believe the senator from Texas, our chairman of the Commerce Committee, he's got some pretty, as I said, chilling information to relate to the American public based on what is happening if we do not pay air traffic controllers. Senator from Texas.
I thank Senator Johnson. It is day 38 of the Schumer shutdown, the longest government shutdown in the history of the United States. Now, Senator Schumer told the world, quote, "Every day gets better for us." Senator Sullivan asked, "Who's the us?" I'll tell you who the us is. This is a partisan political show. It happened because in March, the Democrats decided to be reasonable and allow the government to stay open. And the extreme left wing of the Democrat Party got furious, and Senator Schumer nearly lost his job. And now the government is shut down because the Democrats want to show the radical left wing and their base that they really, really, really hate Donald Trump. Now, on the Democrat side of the aisle, there's a talking point we actually had in the Commerce Committee yesterday. One of our Democrat colleagues said, there's a Republican president, there's a Republican Senate, there's a Republican House. This is the Republicans' shutdown. And I don't know who actually produces those talking points for Democrats, but every one of them, word for word, says the identical thing. Well, I tell you, I spoke shortly thereafter, and I said, every witness in a court of law, before they testify, they're sworn in, and they're asked that their testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I said what my Democrat colleague just did there failed part number 2, the whole truth. You're right. There is a Republican president. You're right, there is a Republican House, and you're right, there is a Republican Senate. What the Democrats also know is that under the Senate rules, it takes 60 senators to vote to fund the government. They all know that. That's not something they don't know. And it's not an accident that they don't mention it. Why do we have a shutdown? Well, let's count. There are 53 desks on this side of the Senate floor. There are 53 Republicans, which means the government cannot be funded until at least 7 Democrats decide we're going to fund the government. By the way, this is not a new development. When Joe Biden was president, 13 separate times, we passed a clean continuing resolution. What does that mean? We had a 60-vote threshold then, too. That means Republicans could have done this garbage any of the 13 times under Joe Biden, but we did not. They didn't have 60 votes. What was different when Joe Biden was president is Republicans voted with the Democrats to allow the government to stay open. And by the way, in March, the Democrats knew that was the responsible thing to do. It does not take much on the magic Google machine to get video of every one of these Democrats saying on TV, government shutdowns are reckless, they're irresponsible, they're wrong. They all know that. But you know what they're counting on? I look up and the press gallery is virtually empty. They're counting on ABC, NBC, and CBS lying to the American people. They're counting on CNN lying to the American people. They're counting on MSNBC lying to the American people. This is not complicated. 14 times the Republicans on this side of the floor have voted to open the government. And 14 times Democrats have voted to keep the government closed. And then, after they vote to keep the government closed, the Democrats walk out to the reporters and say, gosh, I can't believe the Republicans closed the government. That's when a reporter is actually supposed to do something really radical. It's called report. The person telling me he or she is upset at the government shutdown, why did you vote 14 times to keep the government shut down? Now, there are lots of aspects of this that are painful. But there's one in particular that is impacting American families all over the country, which is any family that is traveling for work, traveling to visit a sick relative, traveling to go to a funeral in a family, traveling to go on a family vacation. There are right now over 50,000 TSA agents. Many of them are going to work. They're not getting paid. They miss their paycheck. There are right now more than 14,000 air traffic controllers. Many of them are going to work. None of them are getting paid. That means they're trying to figure out, their last paycheck didn't come, they're trying to figure out, how do I pay my mortgage? How do I pay my rent? How do I pay my food? How do I feed my kids? How do I take care of medical bills? You know what the answer from the Democrats is? Every day gets better for us. If you're hurting and not getting a paycheck, Senator Schumer's answer, I do appreciate his doing the Mr. Burns tent with his hands. I wish he'd started off with excellent. But that is, in fact, his quote, every day gets better for us. On Wednesday, there were over 15,000 flight delays. On Wednesday, there were over 600 canceled flights. Delta Airlines has called on the Democrats, vote to reopen the government. United Airlines has called on the Democrats, vote to reopen the government. Southwest Airlines has called on the Democrats, vote to reopen the government. American Airlines has called on the Democrats, vote to reopen the government. The National Air Traffic Controllers Association has called on the Democrats, vote to reopen the government. Yesterday, I had a conversation with the administrator of the FAA. It was chilling. As everyone knows, the FAA announced that it is putting in place a mandatory 10% reduction in flights in the 40 largest airports in America. What the administrator of the FAA told me yesterday on the phone was why. And here's what Administrator Bedford said. He said, last Friday, which was Halloween, half of the busiest 30 air traffic control facilities were short-staffed. That includes New York, Austin, Newark, Phoenix, Washington, Nashville, Dallas, and Denver. I want you to listen to this next statistic. Nearly 80% of the air traffic controllers in New York City called out. They did not show up to work. Nearly 80%. Senator Schumer represents New York City. Nearly 80% of the controllers called out on Halloween. There were rampant delays. The FAA said the aggregate data, the whole national airspace system, looked okay. But then they deaggregated the data, looking at the 40 biggest airports in particular. It painted a very different picture. Here's what the administrator of the FAA told me. Pilots filed more than 500 voluntary safety reports about air traffic control problems they were encountering. Air traffic controllers that were fatigued, that were tired, they were making mistakes. And what's the Democrats' views? Well, there's an old line that a gaffe is when someone in Washington accidentally tells the truth. You heard Chuck Schumer say every day gets better for us. Here's what one Democrat aide told CNN. Another senior Democrat aide said, as long as public perception is in their favor, the party will not concede short of, quote, planes falling out of the sky. That's out of the words of the Democrats themselves. Let me tell you, as chairman of the Commerce Committee, part of our responsibility is to oversee the FAA and to do everything possible to ensure safety. Turning to my Democrat colleagues saying, this is not a joke. First of all, the shutdown happened because Senator Schumer had to demonstrate he was tough, so he didn't get primaried by AOC in New York. Then the next threshold was the No Kings rallies. They had to show they were tough enough that when radicals were marching in cities across the country, they were as angry as the blue-haired angry radicals. Then we had Election Day. They were going to keep everything shut down to Election Day because it energized their base. And then Democrats won elections in the very blue state of New Jersey, the very blue state of Virginia, and the insanely blue city of New York City. And suddenly Democrats said, holy cow, our really left-wing voters like it when we shut the government down. Are there any Democrats on that side of the aisle for whom responsibility matters? Or is every one of them proud to say, we will keep it shut down until planes fall out of the sky? God forbid that comes to pass. Over 500 voluntary safety reports about air traffic controllers. You got air traffic controllers driving Uber to pay their bills. And here's the good news. We can resolve it right now. Senator Johnson's bill that we will vote on in just a few minutes is very simple. It says any federal worker that goes to work will be paid. If you have to work, if you're a soldier, if you are manning the wall, keeping this country safe, you're being forced to work, you'll be paid. If you're a Border Patrol agent, if you're an FBI agent, if you're a TSA agent, and you have to work, you'll be paid. And if you're an air traffic controller and your job is literally keeping, Mr. President, your children and my children safe when they get on an airplane, you will be paid. And to those in the media who persist in repeating Democrat talking points, understand this. The vote right now, if we vote yes, the air traffic controllers will be paid. If we vote no, the air traffic controllers will not be paid. So every Democrat who votes no, is saying we will not pay the air traffic controllers. What does that mean? There are roughly 45,000 commercial flights a day in the United States. The 10% reduction that the FAA has put in place will be roughly 5,000 flights a day that will be canceled. Now, if you assume 100 passengers are on each flight, I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, so I'm going to make the math simple. 100 passengers, 5,000 flights a day, that is more than 500,000 Americans who will have their flight canceled each and every day the Schumer shutdown continues. More than 500,000. And millions more will have their flights delayed. So it's a simple choice. It is a simple choice. Do you want to pay the air traffic controllers or not? But I got to tell you, you better be ready to talk to your constituents who said, why was my plane canceled when I was going to see my sick mother? Well, because I, Democrat, voted against paying air traffic controllers. That's the answer. You won't like giving that answer. But I'll tell you what, that's a lot better answer than if you have to look in the eyes of someone whose family was killed because the Democrats get what they are explicitly asking for, which is planes falling from the sky. The Schumer shutdown, if you are a left-wing partisan Democrat, you say every day gets better for us. I'll tell you who us ain't. It ain't the American people, so do the right thing because every one of you knows it's the right thing. Vote yes, pay the air traffic controllers, and end this ridiculous shutdown. I yield the floor.
The senator from Texas for his sobering remarks. The chamber should be full. It'd be nice if our Democrat colleagues were here to listen to that. I'm hoping they are listening to him on their TVs in their office. God, I hope it literally doesn't take planes falling out of the sky. Tonight, you can continue your shutdown, but you can vote to pay the air traffic controllers, so that is far less likely. If you vote no, and God forbid it actually happens, can you live with yourself? I came to the floor 2 weeks ago in as nonpartisan fashion as I possibly could, begging Democrats to pay people that are forced to work, that are keeping our skies safe, that are keeping our nation safe. 2 weeks later, we haven't done it. This isn't partisan. Search your conscience. Ask yourself, honest to God, if a plane has fallen out of the sky. I'm not saying it's because of air traffic control, but you heard 500 safety instances. Our air traffic control system is already antiquated. Can you live with yourself if another plane falls out of the sky and more people needlessly die because we were short of air traffic controllers? I know Senator from Alaska has a couple more comments, then we'll turn it over to the senator from Florida.
Well, I just want to thank Senator Cruz, Senator Johnson, for coming to the floor and making this very strong case. And it's about safety, and it's about the American way. There's nothing more American than paying people for the work that they do. We all know that. Again, Senator Johnson's bill is a simple bill. It's about paying the federal workers who are required to work to keep us safe. All these jobs we're talking about are jobs that keep the American people safe. Of course, the military is a big part of this bill. They epitomize the federal workers who are keeping us safe, and they epitomize courage. So do many of our federal workers as well. So I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle just show a little bit of the courage that our military displays every day all over the world. Just a tiny bit of that courage. Again, to my Democratic colleagues, we know you're getting a lot of pressure from your leadership. Senator Cruz did a great job of explaining the origins of that. By the way, it has nothing to do with health care, it has nothing to do with anything. It has everything to do with appeasing the far left of the Democratic Party, which is rising. So we get that you're under pressure. But you all know that voting for this bill is the right thing to do. I know my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. They're good people. As Senator Johnson just said, have a little bit of conscience and a little bit of courage, the kind of courage that our military displays every day, and vote for the Shutdown Fairness Act right now. Every one of you knows it's the right thing to do, and I hope you do it.
I want to thank the senator from Alaska. Yield now to the senator from Florida.
The senator from Florida.
Right. So, Mr. President, first thing I want to do, I want to thank all the senators that are speaking tonight. I can't imagine voting not to pay somebody. You know, in my state, here's what's happening. We have people that are not getting food. At church on Sunday, the pastor asked if we would actually bring in a whole bunch of food because they knew because of what the Democrats are doing, people would not get their food stamps. So all the food banks, they needed way more food. I was talking to a reporter today in Tampa, and they said the line is unbelievable at one of the food banks he was at in Tampa today. And when I think about these people that are not getting their food stamps, I think of my mom. So my mom was a mom of 5 kids. So we lived in public housing. I never met my dad, and she had to go to farm to market stores and ask for food. She never got food stamps, but she had to go ask for food. So just think about what's going on around our country. There's people right now worrying about if they're going to feed a 2-year-old little kid. Can you just imagine what that mom's doing? I mean, I just can't imagine how anybody ever could vote to shut down the food stamp program to not feed kids. Then let's think about all these people not getting paid. So I'll give you my experience. When I was 19 years old, I got married. I was an E2 in the Navy, and I was making $334 a month. So that same person today, and my wife and I, she was making $75 a week as a legal secretary. So those people, if something like that, I didn't have $25 in the bank. They wouldn't have said, "Oh, it's okay not to pay the rent." Any costs we had, no one would have said, "Oh, don't worry, you don't have to pay it now." And so that's what's going on with our military. They have mortgages. Their kids have school costs. You know, their kids want to play sports. They might have medical bills. And my Democrat colleagues are saying they don't care. It's just did they ever live that life? Did they ever live the life that they are worrying paycheck to paycheck how they're going to pay for food, for the rent, for a mortgage? Do you think all the lenders are going to say, "Oh yeah, we know the government shut down, so you don't have to pay your mortgage"? So I just don't know how you could not have a heart to open up government. I mean, we can have a policy disagreement every day, and we should. But to not make sure people get their food stamps, make sure that people are showing up today, as Senator Cruz said, trying to keep us safe in the skies, our military that's trying to keep our freedoms, and the Democrats don't care if they get paid or not. Now let's think about it. Since I got up here, this is my 7th year, I've had a bill that says no budget, no pay. Right? The Democrats have blocked it, including yesterday, because they want to get paid even though they are making the decision that other people don't get a paycheck. They're not willing to give up any of their pay because, like one of them said, he has a mortgage. Why would he be expected to give up his pay? Well, they're doing it every day to all of our federal workers. I just can't imagine doing that. So what I'd say to my Democrat colleagues, open the government. Pay our workers. Make sure people get food, have food on the table. Don't ever, ever, ever in your wildest dreams do that to people in our country. It's wrong to do what you're doing. Senator Schumer came out and said he had a proposal. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. And I'll tell you why. Let's think about what they want to do. For us to be able to make sure that we start paying people, they get food stamps, they want to make sure insurance companies continue to get rich. So their proposal doesn't do anything. So right now, people don't lose their Obamacare subsidies. It's people that make over 400%, that's over probably $128,000, $130,000 a year, get subsidies for their health care. You could be a millionaire. You get a subsidy. So you say he wants to make sure millionaires get a subsidy for people to possibly get any food. Then he knows that Republicans are not going to continue to support a program that pays health care for illegals. That's wrong. It has taxpayer paying for abortion. That's wrong. Has taxpayers paying for trans surgery. That's wrong. Making sure there's about supposedly 4 to 5 million people don't even know they have these subsidies because it's just going directly to an insurance company with no responsibility by a consumer. All you had to do to sign somebody up is know their name, their birth date, their address, sign them up, insurance companies get all the money. Why would we ever support something like that? So I want to thank my colleagues. I can't imagine. It's heartless to not make sure people have food. It's heartless to make sure people don't have money if they're working. And so if the Democrats vote against Senator Johnson's simple bill to pay people that are busting their butt to keep our freedoms, keep us safe, do all these things, I don't know how you can go home and feel good about what you're doing. I yield my time.
I want to thank the senator from Florida. I see the senator from Michigan. I believe he wants to speak to this bill. We will have the last word, but if he wants to get ready, I don't know.
Let the chair. I'll recognize the senator from Michigan, and then we can go back to the senator from Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, let me first say that there's something that we all agree on, Democrats and Republicans here in this chamber, is that we want federal employees to be paid. It's simply unacceptable that they have to work and come to work every day, do their job, and not get paid. That's why we got to end the shutdown as quickly as possible. We're focused on doing that. But that's not really exactly the total story behind the Johnson bill. I have legislation to pay federal employees now. We could vote on that now. I offered it in a UC request from my colleague from Wisconsin and said we have a bill to pay all federal employees right now. No strings attached, no language that gives the president more power, more flexibility to do things that we should not want him to do. But my Republican colleagues don't want to have that bill. Senator Van Hollen, another colleague of mine, has a bill to pay it. It has complete support of Democrats. Let's pay them. We have two bills that if we put on the floor right now, we could pass. If my Republican friends really want to do it, we could pass it with 100 votes. And I'm happy to, it's my bill, but any of you can sign it. I offered it to my colleague from Wisconsin. It could be your bill. I don't need any authorship of it, but it's a bill that does exactly what my colleagues across the aisle are saying, just pay federal employees. And that's what it would do, and yet that's rejected. So why? Well, there's a little bit more in this bill. In fact, the Johnson bill before us actually creates an unlimited and permanent slush fund for President Trump to use. You're not going to get support here from us to transfer what should be congressional power to be able to determine when we want money spent, it actually gets spent the way it should be. It's not about passing a slush fund to the president. The president could justify the transfer of this money elsewhere. This is something clearly the administration wants because it's going to give the White House more power. The bill adds presidential authority by omits the regular safeguards that we include in normal funding bills to ensure that money actually goes where Congress intends. Now, we've been seeing a lot of that. The president basically is just thumbing his nose at Congress every day. Unfortunately, my Republican colleagues say, well, that's okay. If the president doesn't want to listen to the Congress, that's okay with them. You know, we are a co-equal branch of government. We're elected by the people back home to represent our people as senators. We're not here just to rubber stamp a president. I know a lot of my colleagues on the Republican side of the aisle, I'm surprised because a lot of really great people that I have a lot of respect for, and yet we see the president constantly run over Congress, and it's crickets on the other side. No pushback from my Republican colleagues, either here in the Senate or in the House. There's actually, in this bill, there's no explicit guarantee or requirement to actually pay out this money. The administration could sit on this appropriation. We're just blank check appropriation for employees, but the administration can just sit on it for some or those particular programs they don't like. That's why in a normal appropriations bill, we put in language to prevent that. Now, granted, the president has been ignoring Congress, but at least we put it. We're saying these are the rules. Congress has the power of the purse. It's Article 1 of the Constitution. And yet a lot of my colleagues don't seem to take that to heart. So most appropriations bills, including the current House continuing resolution proposal, actually includes restrictions on how funding should be used. The Johnson bill includes no restrictions. And we know that Trump has shown that he will abuse the budget process in very novel ways. He has said that he will refuse to pay back pay to workers even when Congress has explicitly said it. This bill hopefully does address that. He's transferred money illegally to pay for his political priorities, and he impounds money whenever he finds any kind of wiggle room to do that. So in a sense, this bill is a Trojan horse. It's there to say we're going to help federal employees, but it's really continued power for the president. I've heard my colleagues say that, the federal employees are being used as pawns. That's what this bill does. It's using federal employees as pawns to give the OMB and the president a whole lot more power to use a slush fund of money in any way he chooses. We know the OMB director, Russ Vought, likes this bill. We know what Russ Vought's about. In fact, I think there was a leaked speech that Russ Vought had. We mentioned this in the committee, and my colleagues, I appreciate them saying how wonderful federal workers are. But this is what the OMB director, who says this is really a good bill, the Johnson bill is a really good bill. He said, we want the bureaucrats to be trauma. They have to be affected by trauma. When they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want to put them in trauma. I hope my Republican colleagues called out Mr. Vought when he said that, because you care so much about our employees. I appreciate that. But when folks in the administration say things like this, please say that is wrong, that we really do care about you. Not when you're trying to put a bill forward that's going to give the president an unlimited slush fund. Let's be real. If you want to pay employees, which I hope you do, if you want to move forward, then take a bill that we know has the kind of guardrails that our appropriation bills normally do to make sure the money is actually spent as we intend in Congress, which is the way it's supposed to work under Article 1 of the Constitution. I still believe in the Constitution. I still believe that we are a co-equal branch of government. We are not simply a rubber stamp for the president. And if we don't change that way, that's how you lose the checks and balances that our founders cared so deeply about. As our founders were debating the Constitution, they didn't trust any of us. They knew, they're politicians too. They knew you can't trust anybody. So they figure we're going to have three branches. We're going to have the judiciary check the Congress and the president. The Congress will check the presidential power. And Article 1 is the Congress. They thought the Congress was the most important one. but they kind of assumed that the Congress would actually exercise its power and check presidential power, not just hand more to them with a smile and then use some false pretexts in order to give that money. So that's what this bill is about. And, you know, I've tried to work with Senator Johnson. I will always want to work with him. We've worked on a number of bills together. We have language. Again, the bills that we have that I've introduced, which is the Military and Federal Employees Protection Act, it's a straight, clean bill. We talk about union support. Every union has supported my legislation. Every union has supported Senator Van Hollen's. And we're now getting unions. Unions are starting to read the fine print on this bill right now. So we have AFSCME that's now come out against it. We got the SEIU that has just come out against it. We have the AFL-CIO that has just come out against it. We have the IFPTE that just coming out. And our union friends are going to read the language of this bill and they're going to like, oh, we should have read the fine print. Like, yes, it's really important to read the fine print. So we can't support this bill. We can support a bill that pays all of our employees, but it's got to be one that has the types of protections that we have in every other appropriations bill that we try to pass out of this body. So I'm going to oppose this, but hopefully we can find a way to work together. We have two bills ready to go we could pass today, but with this bill, we are going to object to this one.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Is the senator from Wisconsin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not quite sure what planet the senator from Michigan comes from, but here in planet Earth, when you read the actual language of the bill, none of these FANA provisions exist in there. But I will go through those point by point before we call for the final vote. Right now, I think Senator from Nebraska has a few points he wants to make.
Senator from Nebraska.
Right. Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier today, we heard about an offer from the minority leader. It shows just how unserious he and the Democrats are. That offer is full of horse hockey. It has things in it that Republicans cannot accept, and he knows it. And my colleague from Michigan, the Democrat from Michigan, was just talking about power, because this is what it's about. He mentioned power. A number of other folks have talked about leverage. They need to have this shutdown for leverage. A number of Democrats have said this. But what I'm here today is to talk about people, not leverage, not power, people, air traffic controllers. These are letters that I have received from air traffic controllers, handwritten letters that are talking about what they are going through right now because of the minority leader's shutdown. Let me just read you some of these. My wife suffers from a chronic autoimmune disease that without her medication would cripple her. Our monthly copay for her specialty medication is $2,800 a month. We have less than 2 weeks before her next round of medication is due. Our situation is not sustainable, even with pulling money from our savings. That from one of our air traffic controllers in Nebraska. Here's another one. Each shutdown gets harder than the last. The mental stress of the unknown gets harder each time. With my growing family and medical bills for my family, it gets harder every time. Both my children have neurological disorders that require constant monitoring and medical care. I take pride in my job and the service we provide here at Omaha Approach Control. As a patriot and a veteran, I take my federal oath seriously. I will always continue to do my job and keep the skies safe and expeditious. Or here's another one. Myself and my family, to include my 3-year-old daughter, are struggling to make ends meet. I now have to decide between putting food on the table, paying my mortgage, paying my car note, and many other things I need to survive. Are the Democrats deaf? Do they not hear from the people that they're putting in these situations? This is their shutdown. This is their Biden budget they're not voting for. They voted for this 4 times over the last 19 months, and now they won't because their far left wing tells them not to. We have patriots here who are suffering. Why don't they show some of the courage that these people are and stand up to their far left wing and vote for this bill so that at least the people who are working can get paid? Is that so much to ask? That we pay the people who are actually trying to keep the skies safe? The Democrat staffer was earlier quoted as saying, we're going to do this till planes start falling from the sky. Well, folks, we already heard that the FAA is going to cut back 10% this week on the number of flights because of safety concerns. But it's the people that are the air traffic controllers and our law enforcement and everybody else who is working in a federal job that is not getting paid are paying the price for the minority leader shutdown. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield to my colleague from Wisconsin.
Senator from Wisconsin.
And I appreciate the comments from Senator from Nebraska. I think the senator from Utah would also like to speak to the bill.
Mr. President, I want to commend my friend and colleague, the senator from Wisconsin, for his outstanding work on this bill, the Shutdown Fairness Act. Senator Johnson has seized on something very important here. We're surrounded by people in this very building and throughout the United States and across the globe, people who are faithfully, valiantly working for the United States government. Now, some of them are staffers in this very room, not being paid. Some of them are the police officers we greeted on our way in who are keeping the Capitol Hill complex safe. Some of them are soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, guardsmen all over the world who are serving the United States government at risk of life and limb to keep us safe. And there are countless others in different occupations who are not being paid. Why? Well, they're not being paid because our friends on the other side of the aisle are wanting to expand government yet again. They may think that this is the right message, that this is a winning message. This is not. It's not the right message. It's not a winning message, even for them, because it highlights something. It highlights the danger in putting too much trust, too many responsibilities, too many functions in the United States government. So much so that when a crisis like this emerges, and the Schumer shutdown now drags well into its second month, they see that what the American people have previously regarded as a service performed by their government to them is now being held over them to extort even more money out of them under threat of planes falling from the sky. And we're told by Democrat after Democrat on television interviews and elsewhere, well, it's okay. It's okay because this is leverage. This is our leverage. Well, what do they want to use that leverage for? They want to use it so as to paper over the failures, the abject failures of Obamacare, this law that has succeeded in doing exactly one thing: enriching large health insurance companies while making all Americans poorer. Premiums have skyrocketed, coverage has diminished, quality has completely tanked as a result. They know this, they understand this, they see premiums continuing to increase year after year after year. And so what do they want to do with it? Well, they want to spend a lot more money moving forward. Money at a time when the U.S. government is already $38 trillion in debt. Money to hide, to conceal what it is that Obamacare is doing to the American people. When in fact, what Obamacare has done is diminished the health care options that the American people have. It used to be that you could negotiate with a health insurance company and buy a health insurance policy. But Obamacare in many ways made what was once health insurance illegal. We need to make health insurance legal again. We need to allow a willing customer to pay a willing insurer for a health insurance policy, rather than an Obamacare health plan, which very often, through its Byzantine labyrinth of federal regulations, just adds to the cost and adds to the profits, the bottom line of these huge healthcare companies. So yeah, they want to take this to extort the American people in their position of vulnerability at a time when we're told planes may start falling from the sky, at a time when people's airplane tickets are being rendered valueless because a lot of these flights are not going to be able to be made, and all kinds of other problems are happening, while at the same time, our federal workforce is not being paid. These are not the right people to punish for the failures of Obamacare. Don't let them carry that burden. Don't make them do it. They didn't do this to the American people. Obamacare did. Let's fix Obamacare. Let's make it legal again to have health insurance, actual health insurance, not that sort of bastardized form of health insurance that emerged from Obamacare's endless regulations that result in diminished quality, lower coverage, and endlessly higher premiums. Mr. President, this shutdown has gone on long enough. This shutdown should come to an end, and it should come to an end by the very generous offer made by Republicans time and time and time again to continue at spending levels that until just months ago were the Democrats' own spending levels. That's not enough for them. We've got to end the madness and end the shutdown. At the very least, even if we're not to end the shutdown, we should pass Senator Johnson's bill. We should do that tonight. We should do it right now. Because regardless of what you think we ought to do with Obamacare or any other aspect of government, these workers who have now gone for some time without a paycheck, they should not be required to make this sacrifice, especially when you consider what it's for. Hiding the true cost of Obamacare. That is shameful. Again, I thank and I commend Senator Johnson and his team for putting together this legislation. I'm proud to support it. I wholeheartedly endorse it, and I plead with my colleagues to vote for it, and let's get these workers paid. They deserve nothing less. Thank you.
And I want to thank the senator from Utah for his remarks.
The senator from Wisconsin.
Mr. President, I don't want to spend all the time refuting all the misrepresentations from the senator from Michigan in terms of what phantom provisions he claims are in my bill. There's no slush fund. It is completely silent on presidential authority. I know some people want to reduce authority, but that's a bill that won't be signed. If you want to pay the federal workers, if you want to stop punishing them for our dysfunction, if you want to stop using them as pawns in this political game, that's a demand you have to drop. The money appropriated in this bill will go to pay workers. That also is a false argument. But if you're not quite satisfied with the language, it's been out there and we've been trying to work and get feedback for 2 weeks, and we've gotten excellent feedback from leadership, from discussions on both sides of the aisle, from OMB, trying to perfect this thing. The solution is get on the bill. Get on the bill and offer amendment. Keep talking to us. Don't close it down. Now, we heard from a number of our Republican colleagues. We heard from Senator from Michigan. Yeah, obviously, passions are running high. There's a great deal of frustration, certainly on our side, when the other side simply won't take yes for an answer. But I came down here 2 weeks ago in as nonpartisan stance as I possibly could be. Because as Senator from Michigan stated, we all agree that these people ought to be paid. So the way to do that is not offer a bill on unanimous consent that has no chance of being signed into law. The way to do that is to vote to proceed tonight to this bill. If we could iron out differences, we could yield back time and get this thing passed. The Speaker of the House said he'll already come back and pass this. So we are so close. I realize they're going to be hard partisans. I know liberal unions have now come out against this, but the bulk of the public sector unions are for it. They prefer my bill over anything else that they may also support it because this is permanent. This ends using federal workforce and, quite honestly, the American public as pawns in these partisan games for all time. Again, the American Federation of Government Employees, the Federal Managers Association, the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, National Air Traffic Controller Association. And again, I hope our Democrat colleagues listen to Senator Cruz's chilling and sobering remarks just a few minutes ago, the International Association of Firefighters and the Association of Flight Attendants. This bill has support because it makes so much sense. It is fair. So we had 3 Democrats join us 2 weeks ago. There are 2 other Democrats who have voted for the House CR. That brings us up to a total of 58. Now, we vote against this because we didn't have furloughed workers. We've added furloughed workers. So hopefully those 2 will join us. I have talked to enough Democrat senators trying to get their input, trying to get this passed. I know there are Democrat senators that want to vote for this bill, that can vote for this bill. So, putting all partisanship aside, again, I want to appeal to your better angels. Search your conscience. Sign on to a bill. Vote for a bill that ends using federal workers, the American public, as pawns. The senator from Maryland said last week, let's not punish federal workers for our dysfunction. But I think my closing argument has to be to go back to what the senator from Texas was talking about, air traffic control in that situation. 500 safety issues reported recently in our skies. Search your conscience. Can you imagine? I mean, honestly, think about it. Imagine what the one Democrat staffer said, that we're going to cling to this until planes fall out of the sky. Think about how you would feel if, God forbid, a plane, another plane, fell out of the sky and people died. How could you live with yourself? Now, again, you can continue the shutdown. I mean, that's your political choice. You can continue to vote against the very reasonable House continuing resolution. But you can still vote to pay federal workers. You can vote to make sure that air traffic controllers get back to their stations and keep our skies as safe as possible. You can vote to dramatically reduce the chance that a plane will fall out of the sky. We just need 2 more of you. Two more of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are working with, quite honestly, folks on this side trying to end the shutdown. Just 2 of those that I spoke to that I thought would vote for this. I'm begging you, 2 more. Let's get on this bill. Let's pay federal workers. Let's make our nation safer. Let's do the fair thing. Let's do the right thing. Let's vote to proceed to this bill and get it passed. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Majority Whip.
Mr. President, I withdraw my motion to proceed.
The senator has that right. Motion is withdrawn.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to the motion to reconsider the vote on cloture on the motion to proceed to S3012.
Questions in the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion's agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to reconsider the vote on cloture on the motion to proceed to S3012.
Questions on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion's agreed to. The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 191 S3012, a bill to appropriate funds for pay and allowances of accepted federal employees for periods of work performed during a lapse in appropriations and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
Under the previous order, the mandatory quorum call under Rule 22 has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to S3012 to appropriate funds for pay and allowances of accepted federal employees for periods of work performed during a lapse in appropriations and for other purposes shall be brought to a close upon reconsideration. The yeas and the nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsobrooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso.
Aye.
Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt-Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons, Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Merkley, Mrs. Moody, Mr. Moran, Mr. Marino, Mr. Mullen, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Blackburn, Bozeman, Britt, Budd, Cotton, Kramer, Cruz, Curtis, Daines, Ernst, Fisher, Graham, Grassley, Hawley, Husted, Johnson, Kennedy, Langford, Lee, Lummis, Marshall, McConnell, McCormick, Moody, Marino, Mullen, Ricketts, Risch, Schmidt, Scott of Florida, Sheehy, Sullivan, Thune, and Tillis. Senators voting in the negative: Bennett, Heinrich, Kane, Kim, Murphy, Murray, Padilla, Peters, Schatz, Schiff, Schumer, Van Hollen, Warner, and Welch. Ms. Slotkin, no. Ms. Murkowski, aye. Ms. Collins, Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Banks, aye. Mrs. Hyde-Smith, aye. Mr. Durbin, no. Mr. Justice, aye. Mr. Reed, no. Ms. Blunt-Rochester, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Warnock, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Hickenlooper, no. Mr. Coons, no. Ms. Rosen, no. Mr. Crapo, aye. Ms. Also Brooks, no. Ms. Baldwin, no. Mrs. Capito, aye. Ms. Duckworth, no. Mr. Cassidy, aye. Ms. Warren, no. Ms. Hirono, no. Mr. Wyden, no. Mr. Young, aye. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Wicker. Mr. Wicker, aye. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Smith. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Booker. Mr. Booker, no. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Mr. King. Mr. King, no. Mr. Haggerty. Mr. Haggerty, aye. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Rounds, aye. Mr. Gallego, Mr. Gallego, no. Mr. Markey, no. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mr. Ossoff, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Mr. Kelly, no.
I thought it was me.
Mr. Lujan, aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 53, the nays are 43, 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion upon reconsideration is not agreed to. Majority Leader.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I understand there's a bill at the desk, and I ask for its first reading.
Clerk will read the title of the bill for the first time.
S 3166, a bill to rescind unused COVID funding and reduce the deficit.
Madam President, I now ask for a second reading, and in order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I object to my own request.
The objection is heard. Bill will be read the second time on the next legislative day.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 12 noon on Saturday, November the 8th, that following the prayer and pledge, the journal proceedings be approved today, the morning hour be deemed expired, the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Madam President, if there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order following the remarks of Senator Cassidy.
Without objection. Senator from Louisiana.
Madam President, I'm going to try and present a way forward for Democrats, Republicans, and Americans out of our current situation with a different proposal than people have already thought of. Now, the government should have been shut down for 38 days, and tomorrow we're going to vote again, and tomorrow the vote will again fail. But in Americans, Congress is frustrated. We need to open the government. So, if to open the government we need to talk about health care, let's talk about health care. Let's have a conversation in the family. We have an affordability crisis, and health insurance is part of it. Now, this is personal to me. I'm a doctor, practiced in a hospital for the uninsured and the poorly insured for 20 years. And many of those people that came to see me were middle-income Americans who could not afford their medical bills and could not afford insurance. I want to see this solved. But if we're going to solve it now in this present circumstance, we need to move beyond entrenched ways of thinking that have settled us in our camps and refuse to allow us to listen to the other person. And I thank some of my Democratic colleagues for being here. We've got to be creative. Now, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, tried to make health care affordable by giving insurance companies more money. The enhanced premium tax credits, EPTC, is the latest example. It sends, next year it would send $26 billion to insurers, hoping that families see smaller bills. But that actually doesn't make health care less expensive. And for some, it actually makes the health insurance more expensive if you're not getting subsidized care on the exchange. So we can do better than just papering over the cost with subsidies. Instead of paying insurance companies to manage our money, let's trust Americans with a pre-funded, flexible savings account worth as much as the enhanced premium tax credit that they would receive. Let me repeat that. A pre-funded, not out of their salary, but pre-funded from the federal taxpayer, equivalent in value to the enhanced premium tax credit that they would to the American back home. Here's the problem. Under the enhanced to the American back home. Here's the problem. Under the enhanced premium tax credit, if your insurance premium